Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 15 verse 1 and 2 from the New King James Bible says this: Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? He who walks upright and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. I'm with Galya Hall at Christian Friends of Israel, and we're talking about the late Maggie Evans. Maggie sounds to me a great lady. Tell us a little bit about her and what actually happened to her.
Morning, Paul. Yes, it's very strange to hear you use the phrase, the late Maggie Evans. It still doesn't feel real, if I'm honest, to think about the fact that Maggie is no longer with us. So yesterday was a week since Maggie's very tragic and sudden passing. Yeah, it was a very, very freak accident, I guess you could say. Maggie was walking home from Bible study, and what they call a crane truck, where you have a smaller crane that's mounted on a vehicle. It collapsed. It fell over, and it actually struck Maggie on the back of her head as she was walking along the pavement returning home. So it knocked her to the ground, and an impact like that to the head, you can only imagine very, very severe head injuries. And from what we know, Maggie was unconscious immediately. Paramedics arrived from Magen David Adom, and of course they did everything that they could to help Maggie, but she was taken to hospital and pronounced dead shortly afterwards. So a very, very difficult thing to talk about, and a very strange accident.
This must have been quite a shock for the whole Christian community.
Very big shock. We were all at the office here at CFI when we got the call from the chairman of our board to let us know what had happened. She came over straight away. All the team were actually here together for a team staff meeting. Sharon Sanders, who founded CFI with her husband Ray, was teaching, giving a teaching to the staff. And yes, there was shock, there was tears, disbelief, and we just sort of huddled together and tried to process what was happening, what we'd been told.
When did she come to Israel?
So Maggie came to Israel in 1980, and Maggie is originally from England, and she came to Israel to work as a nurse. If I remember correctly, she actually spent some time in India before coming to Israel. But yes, she came and she worked at Shaare Tzedek until her retirement.
Was she Jewish?
No, Maggie was not Jewish. Maggie was a Christian, a lovely English Christian lady with a big heart. Firstly, for people. She had a heart of compassion, particularly for the sick, for the needy, for the poor. And it was just her heart's desire to come and serve. She had a big love for Israel, for the nation of Israel, for the people of Israel. She really understood God's purposes for Israel, that God had chosen the Jewish people. She stood in solidarity and compassion and love with Israel, with the Jewish people. But her heart of love and compassion extended to all peoples.
So it's a big loss for Israel as well as the Christian community. Yeah,
it definitely is. Maggie served as a board member for Christian Friends of Israel for, 26 years. But not just CFI. Maggie was also very involved with other Christian ministries. She was very involved with the Mercy Fund, the Mercy Fund that operates out of Christchurch, that do the most beautiful work supporting those in need. She was very involved with Near East Ministries. That's what she was doing also when she first came to Israel. She was also very involved with Be'ad Chaim, which do amazing work protecting the lives of unborn babies. So Maggie had a tremendous influence in the work of various Christian organizations and ministries across the land.
Wow. So she was a board member here for Christian Friends of Israel. What sort of memories do you have of her?
Yeah, she was a board member for, 26 years. I have wonderful memories of Maggie. I came to CFI in 2004, September 2004. Maggie was obviously already a board member, and I remember meeting her. I remember her very, very well. I remember her very clearly. I would see quite a lot of Maggie. She would come into the office for board meetings and for other meetings, and she would be with us during our annual Shavuot conference and various events. And I got on very well with Maggie from the get-go. I remember that she was always very encouraging to me personally in my own faith and my walk. And as I was just in my 20s arriving in Israel, she had a lot of words of wisdom, words of encouragement. She had tremendous perspective on how to to do well, serving the Lord here in Israel, how to keep things in balance and to keep the right focus always for Maggie. The right focus was first and foremost her relationship with the Lord, with Yeshua, was reading her scriptures, was prayer. Maggie was a woman of prayer. She loved to pray for people. She prayed for us at CFI. She prayed in the board. She really heard from God. She would hear the voice of God. And this was an amazing asset to any ministry, particularly to us at CFI, was the wisdom that Maggie brought, because everything she brought to the table came out of a place of prayer and out of hearing God's voice. A very, very loyal lady, very committed, very dedicated. And I learned a lot from Maggie through her personal, spiritual walk and her faith. I learned a lot from her. And the other thing I remember about Maggie was that she was very down to earth. There were no airs and graces. What you saw is what you got. She was very straightforward, very straight talking, and I loved that. And you could also have a great laugh with Maggie. She had a wonderful sense of humor. She was a people person, very sociable, loved people, loved chatting to people, loved praying for people and encouraging people and building people up. And we miss her terribly.
And there was just a funeral recently. She's buried here in Jerusalem.
Maggie's actually buried on Mount Zion, which is really quite something, isn't it, to be buried on Mount Zion. Yes, we were not able to have the funeral immediately because of the nature of Maggie's passing. Obviously, there's negligence involved and an inquiry, so they had to do an autopsy, and it took several days before the police would release her body, but we did. We had her funeral on Monday of this week on Mount Zion. There was an amazing turnout of people that came from all over the city and further afield to honor Maggie and to pay their respects. And David Pelegi from Christchurch, he led the service in a very beautiful way. We opened the service by singing one of Maggie's favorite songs, Hodu Ladonai Ki Tov. Give praise to God, for He is good. His mercy endures forever. And there were lovely readings, and people got to share some memories of Maggie. And then Maggie's coffin was carried down as we sang Amazing Grace. And you can imagine, like, standing on Mount Zion as the sun was setting, saying our goodbyes to Maggie. It was a very beautiful, very fitting, very emotional send-off for Maggie. And I actually said to somebody, a fellow board member, I said to him, wow, what a resting place for Maggie, what an amazing view. And he looked at me and he nodded, and then he said, well, actually, Galya, Maggie has a much better view now where she is. And I know that he's right, because right now we know that Maggie is in the arms of her God, that she loved with all her heart and served with her heart, with her life. She was so dedicated to Him. And we know that, and we take comfort in that. But that doesn't take away the shock and the sadness of losing her so suddenly.
What do you think her legacy will be?
Wow, that's a big question. What will Maggie's legacy be? Quite hard, I think, to sum that up. But for me, Maggie's legacy will be somebody that walked out their faith with steadfastness and with devotion. It'll be a lady that was filled with compassion and empathy for all peoples, who prayed for people, who cared for people. We spoke earlier that Maggie was a nurse. Now, we all know it takes a certain type of person to work as a nurse, doesn't it? And Maggie had all the characteristics that are needed. She had empathy, she had grace, she had patience, she had compassion, and that extended to her involvement with various ministries and just her interactions with all people. So yeah, what will her legacy be? Like I say, I think devotion to the Lord, devotion to her God, and commitment and loyalty to the ministries that she served with. And at CFI, we are so thankful that for 26 years we had somebody like Maggie Evans, a real woman of valor and integrity, an honest woman, a woman that spoke truth, that we had her on our board for 26 years. We're so blessed. And we feel the gap. The board just met the other day, first board meeting without Maggie. It's difficult for them as well to navigate this. But we give thanks to God for Maggie's life. We don't understand everything, Paul. Things happen. We don't always understand. We have questions. Why? Why did she have to go like that? It's natural to ask these questions. But at the end of the day, we have to trust in God. We believe in God and His goodness and His love for Maggie. And we know that she's with Him.
Well, Galya, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for doing this interview so that we can all remember Maggie Evans and the incredible impact that she had here in the fabric of Jerusalem.
I'm with Tristan Hall, the Director for Christian Friends of Israel, and we're talking about Maggie Evans. Tell us a bit about Maggie Evans, Tristan.
Oh, Maggie. She was a most wonderful lady. She was on our board of directors at Christian Friends of Israel here in Jerusalem for over 25 years. But as you can imagine, she really became a friend to all the other board members because we've been so blessed to have longevity in our board members. Many of them have been on the board serving for decades. And it's more like very much like a collection of friends in many ways. There's genuine love between each of the members. And Maggie was a vibrant, funny lady. She had a great sense of humour, and she also had a great degree of wisdom that she brought to the board. She had a way of quickly determining the right and the wrong of a situation, and also listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit to discern what to do in any given situation. So, yeah, that's how I got to know Maggie. It was primarily through the board, and I'm just very blessed to know her.
So she was a very important person to be on the board of CFI.
She was indeed. She had tremendous experience of living in Jerusalem for many years. I believe she first moved here in the late 1970s, and Maggie was a nurse, so she nursed for some years at the French hospital, and then went on to Shari Sedek, a large hospital, where she worked for many, many years until she retired. So she had seen Jerusalem grow from all through the 1980s and 90s and 2000s into what it is today. And also just the experience that one gets with living here for so long, and in practical ways dealing with the bureaucracy, knowing who's who, where to go. She spoke fluent Hebrew and read Hebrew to a very high standard. She really integrated as a part of society here. And yet she was still very much a Yorkshire lass in other ways. She was from Northern England, and she retained strong links in England. So she really brought together cultures and ways of thinking, and she was a hybrid of the best of both.
And of course, being a nurse, you have to have a heart of compassion, don't you?
Absolutely, and she very much did. She was one of the old school of nursing, and she did it out of love for people, and that never left her even when she retired. And she brought that to CFI, and I think that's why the ministry of CFI appealed to Maggie, because CFI is tremendously practical, as she was, and through its 10 outreach projects to assist people in Israel in all manner of different ways. It was and is making a tangible difference in people's lives, and Maggie liked that, and that was always what she helped to bring to the board, was to retain the focus on the outreach projects and remembering why we're here.
Did she actually go out on some of those projects as well?
She did over the years. She also got to know people in the team very well. There was particularly some of the longer serving members of the team she'd formed close friendships with. So she wasn't just someone that was kind of had a helicopter view, but she was very much of our, can I say, family of the believers in CFI. And she is very missed. And there were many tears when she passed very, very suddenly. But we were just actually at the end of it just grateful to have known her for the time that we did.
Was she very well known within the whole Christian community of Jerusalem?
More than I actually thought she may have been. I mean, obviously I knew she'd been here all these years. She always attended congregation. Latterly, she'd been going for a long time to Christchurch at the Sunday morning service in English. And but at her graveside funeral that we had on Monday, just a few days ago, it was amazing to see how many people came out to Mount Zion, where we had it, for her funeral. There were many people there, and many people spoke just spontaneously and gave tribute to Maggie at a very personal, visceral level. So, yes, it seems that she actually did touch many lives, and she had a wide circle, and she really invested her life in other people.
What do you think her legacy will be?
I think she has a legacy of inspiration, particularly amongst us here at CFI. She modelled purity, holiness. That's something that was picked up on Monday at the graveside, but not in a way that was uber religious and kind of untouchable and unattainable. Just in a very normal, real way. She didn't put on airs and graces, and neither did she adopt kind of spiritual airs and graces, if I can put it that way. She at once very ordinary, but also she led a very godly life. You can't think about Maggie and really think of things that she did that she shouldn't have been doing, or things that were irksome about her personality. She was just, I'm not saying that anyone's perfect, but she really, really was someone to look up to. Not in the sense of putting on a pedestal. She would have hated that. She didn't want any spotlight. But she was in her humility and in her low-key, understated manner, she was someone to be emulated.
Was she a typical Yorkshire lass living in Jerusalem?
Yeah, she was, in many ways. I think the accent faded a bit over time. Mind you, it was many decades. But it was still there, you could still faintly hear it. It was beautiful the way she spoke. And yeah, she brought that Northern English humour with her as well, and that never left her, and that was very engaging. And she always had a twinkle in her eye and a smile on her lips.
Well, Tristan, thank you for sharing today.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for remembering Maggie. She's we won't forget her quickly.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.